Hello, hello.
Hey,
Hey, Professor, do you
can
hear
you
me?
hear
I just want to make sure my mic is working.
Hello?
Do you hear
Someone
me?
is. Yeah, I can hear you. Is it
Okay.
Brandon?
Yeah, Brendan. I emailed you saying I didn't know how to get on, but I figured it out. I just want to make sure you heard me and everything's set up.
Um, I don't know. I haven't I haven't seen your email yet.
No, no, I emailed you literally 5 minutes ago. It was right before
Oh
class.
yeah, then there was no chance that I have checked any email since I mean within
Yeah,
the last 5 minutes. Anyway, so you're here, and it looks like and Brandon, microphone, your microphone needs to be off. So actually, I'm doubling as also a preview user, as you can see. You can see me. Um, uh, you can see me on top, and also you can see me as a preview user. Um, so I'm gonna use, if ever, uh, let me switch this to camera. Hmm. Okay, now what should I do to turn the camera here? Oh, yeah, yeah, here. Okay. Doesn't look that. Okay, the video isn't very clear. I mean, it's kind of dark. You can see me. Okay. Uh, so this is the rule. First of all, you don't have to turn on your camera, but at least use your profile picture. Okay. So how do you set your profile picture? It's just okay. It's not a difficult thing. You see the gear icon, right? Oh, I'm not sharing my screen yet. Oh, so I'm sorry. I'll have to share my. Let me share my screen. Okay, and wait a minute. So can you guys hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I
yeah.
can hear you, but the screen is messed up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's because it's reflecting my screen. All righty. So because I'm sharing my screen, just bear with me for a while. Um, so I just want to show you how to set your profile picture, because you see the gear icon here, right? Gear icon. So if you click on that, I have already you can double click or just single click, I guess, double or single click, and if you click on it, you can drag and drop your picture from your computer or from the mobile device. Okay, so so please, use your profile picture. Um, I don't require a camera. You don't have to turn your camera. You don't have to keep your camera on the whole time. But at least you need to put up your profile picture there. Okay. So I see two people have already put up profile picture, and I see uh, six people here, and someone is attending, just connecting. So Alejandra, Jasmine, Malaysia, Rustam, uh, and Coral. Coral's probably having some connectivity issue.
Is mine showing now?
Yeah, Malaysia, yours is showing now. Yes. So the rest of the class, please put up your profile picture. All right. So without further ado, let's get started with today's lecture. Okay? So I have sent out several emails in the last couple of days, and one of the, I guess, one of the messages was that the lecture videos are assigned in advance. So already starting from Monday, the 17th, right? The videos have piled up, right? And I'm sure you may not have watched all of them yet because obviously already 3 days worth of videos have piled up. So ROI part 1 through part 6, that's for today actually. And then ROI and macro part 1 through 5 is for tomorrow. And macro part 6 to 10, these are for, oh yeah, I mean, Monday, yeah, because tomorrow we don't have class, but so these are 3 days worth of videos. But at least, you may not have watched all of them yet. That's fine, but at least you should have watched at least part 1 through part 6, right? Because that's for today. And if you haven't watched it, it's gonna be a disaster because I can't reteach everything. I mean, during this collaborate session, think about it. These videos are like 30 minutes long. Each video is like 30 minutes long. Some videos are 1 hour long. And just playing these videos alone would take 3 hours. So obviously, we cannot digest this, by going over these. Sometimes I will have to do that because if the majority of the class hasn't caught up, right? If the majority of the class hasn't watched the video, I will have to redo. But I hope not. I just want to work on the assumption that you have all watched these videos, and then I can only, repeat or recapture the important things. So, although we're not going to go through everything, but now if you open that file, right, you see the files are. Okay, I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna repeat the same information, but these are the files that you must use with the videos because. And it says, please download the above files and use them with the videos. Imperative that you use the Excel file to replicate the algebraic models demonstrated in the video. So first, this is the PDF file, but it's basically the PowerPoint that's put on PDF. So we are, starting with return on investment and interest. Okay, these are, interest rate is obviously the basis of all macroeconomics, especially, the monetary policy. So, but then how is it related with ROI, return on investment? So we need to define what return on investment is. Return on investment is also a rate of return. It's a rate of return, right? So in other words, that means this is better. Okay, so return on investment is a rate of return, which means it's a percentage, right? So all returns are basically expressed in percentage, okay? The return means simply, how much your investment has increased. I mean, when I say investment, it doesn't have to be stocks and bonds. A house can be an investment as well, right? A house can be an investment. And so the interest rate is the most basic form of return on investment, right? In that it is the return on the money, right? So think about it. You may know nothing about stocks and bonds, and you are afraid to invest in stocks. But then, what is the best alternative? What's the best alternative, right? Or easiest alternative? Easiest alternative to stocks and bonds? Well, putting your money in the bank, right? Of course, checking account doesn't pay you any interest. Some checkings may pay very nominal, very mediocre but nominal interest. So you can put it in a savings account or CDs. Of course, interest rate on the savings was also almost mediocre, almost immaterial, even a couple of years ago. Now it should be a little better because some savings account may pay something like 3% or more, and some CDs may pay even 4% or 5%. But even a couple of years ago, it was not even it was really immaterial. And you all know what CDs are. CDs stands for certificate of deposit. So it's like CDs are basically like savings account. The only difference is that the CDs have contract period, right? So a CD account is like a savings account, but it has a fixed contract period, and during this contract period, you cannot withdraw money, right? Or if you're early terminated, obviously there's a penalty, right? So based on the assumption that you are not withdrawing money for the contract period, which could be anywhere between 1 year to 2 years, sometimes even 9 months, but that's unusual. 1 year or 1 year 6 months or 2 years, those are typical contractual periods of CDs. Now, even a couple of years ago, by 2021, before which the Fed started to raise interest rate, the interest rate was the benchmark interest rate, or the Fed funds rate, was close to zero. It was 0.25%. So CDs all interest rates were very low. And CDs were barely paying about 1% or 1.5% in 1 year. So, but then there is no, think about it, by putting your money in the CD, there's no risk. You won't lose that money, right? And 1 year later, if at the end of that contract, you will get your principal back plus the interest, and the promised interest. If it was 2%, you will get 2%, and there was no risk of losing, right? There was no risk of losing the money. And since 2022, right, since the Federal Reserve raised the interest rate, the CD rates are much better now. Some could be even 5%. But these are all risk-free, meaning, you have no risk of losing them. You will get it, at the end of the contract period. Now, then the next question is, how can it be risk-free? You might wonder. And some of you may remember what happened earlier this year. Does anyone remember Silicon Valley Bank? Anyone? Does anyone remember what Silicon Valley Bank was? What that was all about? That was like March this year. No one?
I remember hearing about it.
Yeah. And after Silicon Valley Bank, so what was that about? What was that about?
It was something like they messed up an investment or something, and then a lot of people tried to pull their money out at one time, and it messed up something. I don't remember, but it was something to that effect.
Yeah. You're right. Silicon Valley Bank was a regional bank operating in California, probably near Silicon Valley. So probably San Jose, and they have they must have branches in Southern California. But the point was, there was a bank run. People all ran to the bank to withdraw their money, but actually they didn't have to physically run to the bank. That's just a figurative speech, right? That's the figurative way of saying it, because these days, back in 1929, 1926, 29, people ran to the bank. I mean, even until 2000. Even until 2012, people ran to the ATM. But back in 1926, people ran to the window, teller's window, ran to the bank to withdraw their money. But as I told you, it's only a figurative way of saying it these days, because these days they can withdraw by mobile banking. They didn't have to run to the bank. But still, they still call it bank run because it's a crisis. Because they all thought the Silicon Valley Bank was about to go bankrupt, so they wanted to withdraw their money before the bank ran out of money, right? But why did this happen? I'm going to get to that later, but it's because of the mismatching of it's because of the mismatch between their assets and their liabilities. In other words, bank has think about it. Banks' assets mostly come from liabilities. Isn't it right? Don't you think? Because if a bank has $1 billion, where did those $1 billion come from? Where did that $1 billion come from? Anybody? Okay. Anyway, Malaysia, I will give you 1 point for answering that question. Let me just jot it down somewhere. Malaysia. There was a student whose name was Malaysia.
Malaysia.
Yeah, but you are Malaysia. But there was a student whose name was Malaysia. So,
Oh.
Okay. You're getting 1 point, and today is 20th. So where was I? And so if a bank has $1 billion, they don't think about it. First of all, where did that $1 billion come from? Now, first of all, the source of that money in the bank is the deposit, isn't that right? The source of that money in the bank is the deposit, isn't it right? Customer's deposit, right? Yeah, yeah, Rustam, yeah. So, but not all 1 billion is the customer's deposit. Some of it was their own capital. Because think about it, to start a business, they all have to put up their own capital first. They have to put in their own capital. They have to put in their capital first, right? So in case of bank, and their own capital is called equity, right? Think about it. If you are buying a house, and if the house is $1 million, how do you buy? You have to borrow money, isn't it right? You have to borrow money from the bank. Now, how much will the bank lend you? If the house is $1 million,
the amount that's after the amount that is after the security deposit.
Yeah, right. In other words, you have to make your own commitment. You have to make a commitment of your own, isn't it right? First of all, the bank won't lend you $1 million, the entire value of the house, right? They won't lend you the entire $1 million. Why? If you're lending you $1 million and let you buy the house, why would they do that? I mean, they would rather buy the house. It's $1 million is all their money, right? So they will just simply buy out the house and probably just rent it to you. They have no reason to lend you the entire $1 million. I mean, then there's none of your stake. You don't have any stake in the house. You're just buying, and you bought the house 100% with 100% loan, right? You bought the house with loan 100%. Then there's no stake of your own. You don't have any stake in it, right? So that's why the bank won't lend you the entire. You have to make your own. You have to make your own deposit in it, right? So just like that, of course, whether they will lend you 80% or 70% of the house value, it depends on your payback ability. In other words, your solvency, or your credit worthiness, right? But the thing is, you have so buying a house is a project, and it could be your if you want to rent it out, it could be your business, right? You buy the house, and if you rent it out, that could be your business. But the bank, you need to have your own capital in it. That's called equity. So think about it. It's the same thing with the bank as well. The bank will, most of the banks, if the bank has $1 billion, most of it came from the depositors, And the depositors are you might think the depositors are bank customers. That's right. But also depositors are the bank's lenders to the bank. When you are putting your money in the bank, you are passively lending to the bank. You may not think of it as lending when you open an account with the bank and put your money in the bank. You don't realize it, but you are passively lending to the bank. So you are a lender, right? And the bank is passively borrowing from you. So the bank is the borrower. So let's say 90% of that $1 billion is from the depositors, and then the 10% is the bank's own equity, right? Their own startup capital. Now they can lend this money. I mean, what's the business of the bank? The business of the bank is in lending, right? The business of the bank is in lending. So the bank will lend, and when they lend, they will charge interest. So think about it. Bank has two kinds of customers. Bank has two types of customers. One is borrower. The other one is a lender, right? Lender is a customer who puts their money in the bank with the bank, and they get some interest, very small interest. And the bank, when they must make money with this $1 billion. So what do? They lend. And the people who borrow money from the bank, they are borrowers from the bank's perspective, right? And they are another type of customer to the bank, right? Makes sense? So bank is borrowing money from customers who are depositing money, and they are lending that money to the customers who are borrowing from them. So obviously, there are two kinds of interest rates here.
Professor?
Yeah.
So we can say the bank is the middleman.
Of course, bank is an intermediary, a financial intermediary. Yes, the bank is a middleman. But so the bank, first of all, so the bank, when the bank lends money, they will charge interest. Isn't it right? They're not going to do it for free. They're not going to do that for free. So they will charge interest. So the bank lends, let's say, out of that $1 billion, the bank lends 1 billion, let's say. They lend out 1 billion. And let's say they charge 10%. Okay? And of course, how much they charge to the borrower depends on the borrower's credit rating or the credit score and the borrower's asset, if the borrower has assets, and borrower's income, right, etc., etc. These determine the credit worthiness of the borrower. And if this credit worthiness is high, the interest they charge will be low. Okay, they don't have to charge high interest because if you have high credit rating, you are a low risk to the lender. Isn't that right? If you are the borrower, you are a borrower, and your credit score is very high. You have very good income. You have a house. You have, a business. You have a lot of assets that, the bank can fall back on in case you default. So you are a low risk borrower, and the bank won't charge high interest on you. The bank won't charge high interest with you because if they charge high interest, they will lose your business, right? The borrower can, a high quality borrower can always walk away, right? And go to another bank. They can do business with another bank, right? That charges lower interest. But let's say this interest rate they charge is 10%. So the bank will make 10% on the 1 million that they lend. However, this 1 million came from someone, isn't it right? This 1 million came from a depositor. Okay, and to this depositor they owe interest, isn't that right? They owe interest. The bank owes interest to the depositor. So what kind of interest will they pay? Well, one thing is for sure. They will pay lower than 10%. Isn't that right? Because they cannot pay 10% out. They cannot pay out 10% as interest, which they just earned from the borrower that they charged 10% to. That makes sense? So by lending that 1 million, if they make 10%, from that 10%, they will pay out interest to the depositor who made that $1 million deposit. So the rate they pay out will be lower than 10%. Will be much lower than 10%, actually. Will be much lower.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just leave last one.
I'm sorry, there's an echo and you're breaking out.
Yeah.
And maybe you are. Is there any way you can something? Maybe some audio devices on near you. That is, or you can type. You can type in the question in the chat box. Then I can answer the question. So, okay. Who's leaving to join my iPad? Is that okay? Yeah. That's okay. That's okay. You're leaving. You're gonna join with iPad. Okay. All right. Or yeah, you can do that. Or you can just type in the question in the chat box, and I will answer your question. All right. So anyway, where was I? So now you can now tell, oh, there are two types of interest rates. You can tell, right? There are two types of interest rate. One is when the bank is lending, the rate when the bank is lending, and the rate when the bank is borrowing. Right? Makes sense? It's called lending rate and borrowing rate. Based on, bank's perspective. It's based on the bank's perspective, right? Because when you deposit money in the bank, the interest you get on your deposit is called borrowing rate. You might wonder, why is it borrowing rate? I'm not borrowing, I'm lending. Yeah, you're not borrowing, but the bank is borrowing. So from the bank's perspective, it's their borrowing rate, right? And if somebody borrows 1 million from the bank and the bank charges 10%, that's called the lending rate. Because the bank is lending. Of course, from the borrower's perspective, they are borrowing, they're not lending. But so it's from the bank's perspective. Okay, you got to remember that it's from the bank's perspective. Okay, now I see 10 people currently logged in, and I don't see. I still don't see profile picture from 4 people. I already showed you how to put up profile pictures, so please do it ASAP. If you don't have any profile picture yet, please do so. Alejandra, Michael, Shanaz, Winking, Zainab, please put up your profile picture. So, but this will be all right. Zainab, yeah, thank you, appreciate it. So now you see that interest rate is the risk-free return on investment. It's the risk-free return on your money, right? Why is it risk-free? And once again, when there was Silicon Valley Bank crisis, I guess somebody's microphone is winking.
Oh yes, I have a question, Professor. I want to know what does APR stand for? HPR stand for?
Annual percentage rate. You said APR?
No, HPR.
Oh, holding period return.
A holding period return. Okay. Thank you. Holding period return. Holding period return.
This is hard to write. Holding period, right? So I was saying that when there was, Silicon Valley Bank crisis, it was because of the crisis didn't have to happen if there was no bank run, but people panicked, right? The depositors of the Silicon Valley Bank panicked, and they ran to the bank. There was a bank run, and trying to withdraw their money. But think about it: bank doesn't hold a lot of money in. They don't hold their assets in cash reserves. As I said, remember, I said banks make money by lending money. So if the bank has $1 billion, what do? They lend it, right? They lend it. So they only hold minimum reserve in cash. Minimum reserve in cash. So if all of the bank customers, depositors, withdraw their money all at the same time, they don't have money to pay out. So what do? They will have to recall. They will have to recall the loans, outstanding loans. But again, the loans are contracts. The loans are contracts. It's not like they can recall my home mortgage. They cannot recall my, let's say I have, a 30-year mortgage. But until the end of those 30 years, they cannot just simply recall my loan, right? Because it's a contract. And whoever breaches the contract is liable for all the penalties and everything. I mean, so obviously, they once again, recalling the loan is also figurative speech, figurative, right? Because Silicon Valley Bank, some of their reserves, some of their assets were in loans, right? But most of it was in the treasury. Okay, treasury bill, treasury note, treasury bond, right? U.S. Treasury. Most of it was in U.S. Treasury. It's Treasury bond, right? It's U.S. federal government bond. So it's just the way they manage their portfolio. The banks, when the banks have, when they have $1 billion in deposit, that's once again that's a liability because they owe it to the borrower, they owe it to the depositors, but they have to use this money to make money. So they loan it out, right? They make some, car loans, right? They make home mortgage loans. They make, commercial loans, commercial property loans, right? Real estate, or they put some in the stock market, but stock market is very volatile and risky. The banks cannot take too much risk from by putting money in the stock market. So they only put small amount in the stock market, and then most of it they put it into the safest asset in the world, which is the U.S. Treasury security. Now, think about it. However, what happened? What happened early this year? Since 2022, Federal Reserve started to raise interest rate, and as the interest rate went up, if the interest rate goes up, the bond prices go down, and this is something we're gonna discuss later on. So normally this was quite safe way of managing the money. Putting money in the Treasury securities is a very safe way of managing money under normal circumstances. But earlier this year, there was what they call yield curve inversion, which means long-term the return on the long-term bond was lower than return on the short-term bond, which is normally the other way around. And when this happens, it's usually the signal of the impending recession. However, it never materialized, it never happened, but because of recession, panic, recession scare, they were all, in a panic, and they ran to withdraw their money, and that caused the bank run. And then they had to think about it. I told you the banks do not hold reserves in cash. It is all invested, and most of it is invested in the safest asset in the world, U.S. Treasury. Now, so they had to think about it. They had to sell. They had to liquidate the treasury holdings that they were, holding, and then they did it at the most awkward moment. They did it in the at the moment when the interest rate was very high. And I told you there was an inverse relationship between the interest rate and the bond price. If any asset price, if the interest rate goes up, asset prices go down. So the treasuries were sold at very deep discount. So in other words, think about it. If the bank was holding $1 billion, and suppose they were holding it in treasury, and let's say there was 10-year treasury, so, and at 5% interest rate, 5% interest rate a year, so over 10 years, you might think, oh, that would be 50%. No, it would be 1.05 raised to 10. So, but anyway, if they let the bank hold it until maturity, if they let the bank carry it to the maturity, they will have $1 billion, and let's say roughly 50% over 10 years, right? They will have $1.5 billion at the end of 10 years. And the bank customers will have no problem getting their money back with their interest. But because they panicked and ran to the bank and withdrew money, tried to withdraw their money, the bank had to liquidate these treasury securities prematurely at very high discount. Then it's not even $1 billion. Right? They cannot even recover $1 billion. Think about it. If you have to, if you need to pay urgently, if you need to pay urgently $30,000, but you don't have $30,000. Instead, you have a car that is still worth $35,000, right? You have a car that has the resale value of $35,000 under normal circumstances, but you are in such an urgent rush to come up with $30,000, so you sell this car at a short notice. Think about it. If you are urgently selling something, you don't even get the full value on it. You may not even get the fair resale value of your car, maybe $35,000. But when you have to sell it urgently, right? You don't have that choice. You don't have the luxury of that choice. You may have to sell it below 30,000. And it's just like that. The bank, Silicon Valley Bank, had to liquidate their assets, which they were holding mostly in the Treasury securities, and Treasury securities had to be sold at deep discount. So then, eventually, they couldn't come up with $1 billion because they sold their assets at deep discount. So this is the problem. And then they owe $1 billion to the depositors plus interest, but they cannot even come up with $1 billion. So what's going to happen? Then that's the bankruptcy. That's called the bankruptcy. Now, because of that, there is what they call FDIC, right? Anybody? Does anyone have any idea what FDIC stands for? FDIC stands for Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. So this is a insurance. This is an insurance company, right? Insurance company for the commercial banks. So the deposits in the commercial banks are insured up to $250K, okay, per account. So if you are a Silicon Valley customer, and if your deposit was under $250,000, it was guaranteed by FDIC. Okay, and even after that, Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, even appeared on TV and on news media, saying that U.S. Treasury is guaranteeing even the deposits above $250K. So that quelled that crisis, that quieted. So everything went quiet and no further. There was First Republic and there was Signature Bank and a couple of banks, that regional banks that were facing similar crisis, but everything died out. Okay. So to cut the long story short, right? To make interest rate is the safest return on investment you can get. However, that means it's the lowest, right? Because you're not taking any risk. It's a riskless return on the money. You're taking no risk. And if you're, with no risk, there comes low return, right? Obviously, if you want to make a high return, you have to take the risk. You have to take a high risk. So obviously, stocks are more popular than bonds because bonds are safer than stocks, but bonds pay you lower return because there's, a very bonds have very low volatility in general compared to the stocks. So anyway, then talking about the types of return, right? I told you return on investment is percentage, is rate of return. So one is holding period return, and the other one is annualized return. Annualized. So holding period, think about it. Holding period means, how long you're holding the asset, right? If you're buying a stock, you can hold it for 1 month or even 1 day. Just, if you're a day trader, you buy and sell, even, frequently, even several times during the day. If you are, so holding period can be any length of time. Could be 1 year, 1 month, 1 week, 1 day, 3 days, 3 months, right? And obviously, you can calculate the return over that holding period, right? And then annualized return. Annualized return literally means you are annualizing because you may have seen some commercials, CDs. Buy our CDs. We pay you 5% APR, annual percentage rate, a year. But CD, think about it, but the contract period is 9 months. 9 months. Now, what does that mean? If you hold it for 9 months, do they give you 5%? No, obviously not, because 5% is annual. And if the contract period is only 9 months, why do they give you annual rate? Because annual rate is easy to compare. I mean, all the rates must be expressed as annual so they can be compared on the equal footing. Okay? When all the rates are expressed as annual, you can easily compare which one is better. But in this particular example, I told you the CD contract period is 9 months. So actually for 9 months, how much would you get? You get 9 months is 3/4 of a year, isn't it right? 9 months is a 3/4 of a year, 3/4 of a year. So you will get, simply you adjust 5% by 3/4. Whatever is 3/4 of 5%, that's what you will get. Make sense? But the reason they don't express it as 9 month rate is because then if 1 year and a half, 1.5 years, I mean, you cannot compare it easily with 1.5 year CD contract.
Professor, I have a question, if you don't mind, I ask you now. So the way they calculate the AP, how much actual interest we will gain for that 9 month CD with the APY is 5%. Is it that's how you use? I mean, this is the way I do it, but so I want to check with you. Okay, let's say I put in $100, and just pretend, okay, $100, and then I times 5% and divide by 12, so each month, and then times 9 again. Can I do that?
Yeah, you can do that. You can do that.
So that's correct, right? So instead of 5 times 3 divided by 4.
Yeah, 9 over 12, but 9 over 12 is exactly 3/4.
Okay, so either way, I can use the 5 times 3 divided by 4, or 100 times 5% divided by 12, and then times 9 again. Either way work. It's the same.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, I just want to find out if I do it correctly. Thank you.
Yeah. So now you get the idea, right? So everything has to be, all the rates must be on annual basis. to make the comparison easy. If there is another product, another CD product that gives you 6% over, let's say, that gives, that gives 5.5%, 4 point, there's a CD product that gives you 5%, 5.5% over 1.5 years. Now it gives you 5.5%, but you have to, the contract period is 1.5 years. Now this CD gives you 5% a year, but contract period is 9 months. So you adjust it by 3/4. So so that would be what? I mean, but if they don't give you, if they gave you like, for 9 months, we're going to give you, then why is it 2? What should be the exact number? Come on. Yeah. If they told you we're going to give you 3.75% for 9 months, and if they told you we're going to give you 4.5% for 4.5% for 1.5 years, it's not easy to compare because the holding periods are different. So we need to annualize them, right? And if you annualize it, this CD, let's call it CDA. CDA gives you 5% a year. And then if you annualize it, that 4.5, whatever, a year in maybe, it's 4.5% for 1.5 years. So it's actually, when annualized, it would be a lot lower than, it cannot be, it should be lower, right? So by annualizing, you can put all the rates on equal footing and you can easily compare. So returns must be annualized. But before we move on to the next one, what is this? I mean, P stands, holding period return is basically P price at time t plus n minus price at time t plus sum of all the cash flows where time runs from 0 to n over pt. Now think about it. P stands for price. And these are time markers. These are called time subscript. Time subscript is nothing but a time marker. Time marker means it marks the time. So if t is let's say if t is 2010, if that was the price at the end of 2010, so you're buying an asset and you're holding it for, that's why it's called holding period return. Let's say you are holding it for 10 years. Let's say n is 10. Then what is t plus n? And the t plus n should be 2020. Isn't that right? It's 10 years later. Right? Everyone is following? So if your holding period, so this means your holding period was 10 years, from 2010 through 2020. And what were you holding? It could be anything. It could be stocks. It could be stock or bond, or let's say it was a stock. It could be, or it could be a real estate. If you're holding the stock for 10 years, 10 years ago, let's say the price of the stock was $150. 10 years later, in 2020, let's say it is $650. Now, simply, anybody would think the return over these 10 years must be, oh, it's 500 over 100. Isn't that right? This much, there was a gain or appreciation in stock price by $500, right? Over the initial investment of $150. Isn't that right? This $500 is called PT plus N minus PT. This is called capital gain or capital appreciation. And it was 10 years. It's been 10 years. During those 10 years, the stock must have paid dividends. Okay? Dividends are not mandatory. They may or may not pay dividends. They do not always pay dividends, right? They don't always pay dividends. Some stocks pay dividends, some stocks don't. And growth stocks don't pay dividends generally, growth stocks. But if they were paying dividends, if this is a dividend paying stock, they pay dividends 4 times a year, because there are 4 quarters a year. Each quarter, right? They pay dividend. I mean, dividend depends on their performance. Each quarterly performance. So we are in the July. So we are in January through March, first quarter, April through June, second quarter, right? And then July, we just started the third quarter, right? But we are starting to get the report, earnings report, right? The performance report of the second quarter. So in August, we'll be receiving the dividends from second quarter, right? Make sense? So there are 4 dividends a year, but let's say we aggregate all of them. We aggregate 4 quarterly dividends, and then that's what? Annual dividend, right? If you aggregate 4 quarterly dividends, then it's annual dividend. So over 10 years, you must have had at least 10 annual dividends, right? So this is that. This is cash flow. Cash flow is, in case of stock, is dividend. In case of stock, again, time subscript, because that's the dividend of year 1, dividend of year 2, dividend from year 3, dividend of year 4, dividend of year 5. But you cannot write it like that. I mean, how tedious and dull, and how unintelligent if you have to write, oh, over the last 10 years I had dividend in 2010, dividend in year 1, dividend in year 2, let's say if you have to write it like that, you'll have to write 10 of them like this, right? So I don't need to explain to you why this is a stupid way of, not very smart way of doing that. So instead, we put it like this. What does that mean? That means sum. You're summing up all the cash flows each year, right? Cash flows at each time, right? In our example, since it is stock, it is dividend in year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, with time starting from time 0 through time running from 0 through n. Okay, 0 is the beginning of our timeline. I mean, beginning of year 2010, right? If you were starting to hold this asset, if you started to hold this stock on January 1st of 2010, then you were holding it for the full entire 2010, and you must have collected 4 dividends from 2010, right? So time zero is the beginning of 2010, January 1st of 2010. That's time 0, and running all the way to the end of n is our 2020. So end of 2020. If you sold it at the end of 2020, you were really holding it for full 10 years, right? And then you must have collected 10 annual dividends. Does that make sense? So holding period return is basically capital gains plus all the cash flow during the holding period divided by your initial investment. Okay, that's what it stands for. And now then we need to know how to annualize. We need to know how to annualize the holding period return, because holding periods can be all different by the individual investor, or by each investor, right? So next is how to annualize, right? How to annualize the holding period return. And it's 7:09, so we're going to take a 10-minute break. So we're going to come back at 7:20. But before I go, please, I see still a lot of people haven't put up profile picture. So please do put up profile picture, okay? ASAP. And another thing, I don't know if you have, I just posted use Collaborate login records. Please be advised that in addition to the discussion board, Collaborate login records are also used as the basis for attendance. For your information, you must be present, logged in for at least 80% of the class time to validate it as present. We have no. We have 100 and no. I'll have to change this. Not the 180 minutes. We have 2 hour 15 minutes. So that's 35 minutes, right? So 80% of that. No. Someone just asked. You might wonder, how do I? I'm logged in as two people, two person. I'm logged in as Dr. Jeff Hong, and I'm also logged in as Jeff Hong preview user. And as a preview user, I can see your. So someone just asked, camera. If we have our camera on, do we need to upload the profile picture? No, you don't. If you have your camera on, but however, when your camera is off, I mean, if you keep your camera on the whole time, and I don't think your camera is on, it's you don't see that. You see, someone just asked.
Hi, Professor. This is Shana
Yeah.
speaking. Hopefully, you see my profile photo. I tried to change it. I don't know if it shows up on your end.
See. Coral Mercedes. I don't see it yet. I don't see it here. So, but try to put it up. Otherwise, if you have your, as I said, if you have your camera on, you may not. So let's take a 10-minute break, and I will be able to see if you have your camera on or not. Okay, so I'll stop sharing. Okay, Nakisha, your camera is on. That's good. That's good. I can see you. And here's me again. I don't know why that looks like that. I'm also here. Okay. All righty. So if your profile picture is not up, please do it ASAP. So let's take a 10-minute break. It's now 7:13. So that means we're gonna come back at 7:25. Okay. All righty.
And Professor, when's class over?
8:15.
Okay, thank you.
Professor, I can't hear anything.
We have a break until 7:25.
Oh, okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we're back. Oops, something. Can you guys hear me? We're back.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Good.
Professor.
Yeah. It's not still my other computer on my other screen where I'm logged in as a preview user. It's not still showing. So anyway, so our continuing with our discussion, right? So how do we annualize annualization means, basically taking the annual average, right? Annual. But average, when we say average, most of you are only familiar with one type of average, which is called, simple average or arithmetic average, which is what? Adding up all the data points, right? Adding up all the numbers and divided by the number of the data points. In other words, that's the average. Most of you only understand that as average. That's the only average that you know. For example, if I'm taking the average height of the people in this classroom, what do? I will take height data of each individual, right? Everyone's height. I will measure either, everyone's height, or, download the data of your heights from somewhere, add them up. On the roster, there are 18 people in this class. Currently, only 11 showing up there. But, let's say there are 18 people in this class. Actually, that's on the roster. So what would I do? You think, that's simple. I sum up all the heights of these 18 people and divide it by 18, right? But that's arithmetic average, which is also called simple average. And that means mean, simply the mean, that means average, right? Mean, average. You understand what this means. X is each individual data point. Each individual data point. I stands for individual. I stands for individual. And that individual runs from 1 through n. And in our sample, n is 18, right? 18 people in this class. However, that's not the only average. There's weighted average, and there's geometric average. Weighted average and geometric average. What is weighted average? Your GPA is a good example of weighted average, right? So suppose you had you took 4 classes last semester. You took English, math, some African Latino studies, some ethnic studies, and art, and you got B plus B, A minus A. So you think, oh, B plus is 3.5, B is 3.2, A minus 3.7, A is 4. So, taking the average of this, and you think of this simple average or arithmetic average. Add them up, divide by 4, and you get 3.6. No, that's wrong. Why? You didn't take into account, you didn't take into consideration the credits they are carrying. Credits. English carries 3 credits, math 4 credits, ethnic studies. Some ethnic studies are 2 credits. I mean, in the old days, I don't know, maybe these days, everything is 3 credits. But, in the old days, there were 2 credit ethnic studies course and even 1 credit art or music class. So what are these? These credits are the weights they carry. Weights are importance. Weight means importance. Isn't that right? Weight means importance. When you say, well, not everyone has the same voice, and his voice carries the most weight. What does that mean? No, it has the most importance, right? So that means math has the most weight, most importance, right? So then your GPA cannot be just simply the simple average of these. You cannot just add them up and divide it by 4. What you need to do is you need to weight these grade points. You need to weight these grade points by their weight. Okay, so that's weighted. So if you multiply, that's weighting, right? 3.3. So if you multiply that, this is the weighted grade points, right? And then if you add them up, it's this, right? And divide it by sum of all these weights. You don't divide it by 4, you divide it by sum of these weights. And then you come to this. This is your GPA. So that's weighted average, okay? There isn't only simple average. If you only understand average as simple average, then that's very elementary, right? If you're a college student, you should at least understand what weighted average is, why weighting is needed. And then there is also geometric average. And what's a geometric average? Now let's take a look at this example. So this is an example of buying a house. I mean, your asset is the house. Your asset is the house. And you bought the house, let's say at the end of 2005. And the house was 150K. And you sold it at the end of 2016 for 500K. So the holding period was exactly 11 years. Isn't that right? 11 years. Now, these are how the house value behaved, house price. This is the data series of how house value behaved, measured at the end of the year. So you can tell during this 1 year, between the end of 2005 and end of 2006, during this 1 year, the house value increased by 30K. That's capital gain, right? Capital gain. And then between these 2 years, actually it dropped. And then between these 2 years, it went up like this. So each year, right, we see ups, some capital gains or capital loss. This year you had capital loss, but otherwise capital gain. But this year there was a capital loss. And between 2015, 14 and 15, no change. No change. Now, think about it. If this can be compared to a stock. If you bought a stock price, every day stock price changes, but let's say we measured it at the end of each year, right? The price changed like this, and I told you, there are 2 types of stocks that don't pay dividends and stocks that pay dividends. And if the stock didn't pay any dividends, sum of all of this capital gains, which comes to 350K, that's the capital gains for the holding period, right? However, if this stock is paying dividend, and for example, for the first 3 years, it didn't pay any dividend. But from the 4th year, right, it paid dividend, or in our example, it's a house. So let's say you bought this house and you started, you are primarily using it as your home, but from year 2009, you started to rent it out. And then rents come in annually 18,000. So that's like, must be 1,500 a year, right? If you, 1,500 a month, right? Right? 1,000. If the rent per month is 1,500 annually, and then from 2011 you raised it by 10%, and then you raised it to 24,000 a year, right? So these rental incomes are your cash flows, and these are capital gains. Now think about it. This brings us to two scenarios, two types of scenarios. Scenario one, you bought the house and just use it as your home. Then there's no rental income. Scenario two, you rent it out. It's a rental property now. Then it generates income, which is cash flow, right? So that's scenario two, right? So scenario one is just like a stock that doesn't pay any dividend, right? Scenario two is like the stock that pays dividend. Now, just like the stock, the house can, stocks go up and down in value, the price, right? House also goes up and down in price, the value, right? Let's call it price. Value is a more philosophical thing. So scenario one is the case where you buy the house and use it as your home. No rental income, no cash flow there. In scenario two, you live in the house, but you also rent it out. So there's additional income, right? Now, this column, look at this column that says G. G stands for growth rate. Growth rate is simply how much did it grow? How much the house value grew year by year, year to year, year to year. So 150K to 180K, it grew by 30K. So the growth rate is 20% because it's this divided by this. And what you're looking at is exactly scenario one, right? In scenario one, we are not considering this. In scenario one, we're not considering this. We assume this is 0. In scenario 2, this will be a positive number, but in scenario 1, this is 0. Now, this is capital gain. The difference is capital gain, which is, in our example, 30K. Right? And you do the same for every year. So let's do this with Excel, okay? So I'm gonna, and I must have already downloaded this file somewhere. Let me just. Now, you need to download this file, right? This is the file you need to download. This is an Excel file, okay? If you download it, you will, I have already downloaded it, so it must be somewhere. Okay, somehow it's not there, so let me download it. So you got to have this in front of you. Do you have it in front of you? It's not taking so much time to open it like this. So that's why I wanted to get here. It's downloaded here. Why isn't it opening? Ah, here. I already have. So never mind. Why is it taking so much time? You guys all have it in front of you?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Professor,
So
I can't see anything on the screen.
yeah, because it hasn't fully opened. Now, do you see it?
No, Professor, I think something's wrong with my reception. I can't see anything on my screen other than like, whoever's on the class.
Well, I see it on my other screen. I mean, I told you I'm also logged in as a student as well,
I
and
see.
I see it.
I see it.
Okay, and someone couldn't see it. Do you
Maybe
still?
she should start her service, like leave the room and come back.
Yeah, probably. I mean, if you log out and or re-log in, or I guess it's the it's your browser setting. So try another browser or different browser. Okay. Now, so let's do this. So I know during this holding period, my this is not cash flow, but sum. Let's just say.
I thought we were supposed to do this. I finished it. I didn't know we was gonna do it together.
Well, you can do this together now. I mean, while we still have time. Okay. Sum, right? So basically, the capital gains over 11 years is, simply, by taking, subtracting this from this, it will give you that. Also, another way of doing that is annual, by, taking year to year capital gains. is this minus this, and then you simply drag it down. Okay, so it gets basically by you're copying and pasting the formula that was in here, right? And then what you need to be very careful when you're dragging down, because when you select the cell, you see the borderline is highlighted, right? But you need to bring it to this corner. And if you bring it to this corner, you will see, maybe I should, yeah, make it bigger. If you bring it to this corner, the cursor turns into a thin black cross. Otherwise, when you put it here, it's like thick white cross. And then when you bring it to the borderline, it is arrow-headed cross. Arrow-headed cross means you can move it around. However, you don't want to move it around. You just want to copy and paste down. So you bring it to this corner, and then when the cursor turns to thin black cross, you can just drag it down, and then the formula gets copied into the remainder of the cells. Now, and here I have already built in sum command, summing everything in this column, C2 through C12. So the same thing. Now, the income, it was already, these are initial data, because this had to be given. So it's initial data, right? Well, I hope you can all hear me well. And you can see how I got these numbers, right? It's based on the assumption that the monthly rent is 1,500. And then from here, I used D8. This is D8 times 1.1. That's 10% increase. And then, now, if you raise rent to $2,000, then it's going to be $24,000 a year. Now, growth rate is simple. Capital gains divided by the previous year. And then just drag it down. Now here, so what is the holding period return without cash flow? Without cash flow. In other words, scenario 1, what's the holding period return in scenario 1? Well, because in scenario 1, what is scenario 1? Just using that house as your home. You just live in that house. So you don't rent it out. So there's no rental income. Then there will be only capital gains or capital loss, right? So over these 11 years, capital gains was 350K, and you divide it by P0, right? Times 0, okay? Or PT. Yeah, Zainab, you have a question?
Yeah, Professor, I have a question. How did we get the values in the F column, like the where it says 20.77%?
I'm sorry, you have a lot of echo, but you were asking.
Yeah, this one.
Well, it's simply annual year-by-year growth rate, right? Between 2015 and 2016, capital gains, or growth in the capital value, right? Because the house is your capital. Growth in the capital value was 86K. Over what? Over this, which was the previous year's house value, right? Or your capital value. And I already preconditioned it as, okay, you see, I have already said it, I have already selected percentage. For formatting, right? Number formatting, I have already selected percentage, right? And I used only, it may come with, lots of digits, but I limited it to second decimal place. And then I copied and pasted it, right?
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
All righty. So please put up your profile picture before too late. Oh, now there you are. Now there you are. All right. And then, where was I? And then holding period with return with the cash flow. Scenario 2, if you're renting it out, it's not complete yet. It is basically, think about it. You know what to do. Capital gains plus sum of all the cash flows, right, over initial investment. Now I don't have any number here. That's why it comes out. It comes out same as this. But if I drag it to the right, the formula has been copied, summing up everything, right, between D2 and D12, right, summing up everything D2 through D12, this. So then D14 has something there. So now you got 347.73%, which is the holding period return with cash flow. Now the thing is, what you see here is exactly, where was I? God, it takes so much time. What you're seeing there is exactly this, right? It's exactly this, isn't it? That was capital gains for 11 years, right? Which is, and then cash flow for 11 years, right? C14, which is 350K. That's this, 350K. And D14, 171,600. $171.6K. What's the other dollars? Right? Divided by 150K. Okay. Now, then the question is, okay, we need to annualize this. So how do we annualize this? Again, this is just the growth rate, annual growth rates in scenario 1, right? Because it's the growth rate measured by only the capital gains. If you use simple average will be, you will sum everything divided by number of data points. What is this? Count F2 through F12. That means, you know, it's going to count data points. So that's going to count 11. But then, is this correct? No, it's not correct. Why is it not correct? Because it is overstating. Why? Actual unbiased annualized growth rate is actually calculated this way, which is called geometric average. But why is it like this? I mean, isn't this good enough? It is close, but it's not good enough because it's overstating the true growth rate. And if you have a longer time horizon, it will really overshoot, right? So it will, for example, we have, you know, our holding period is 11 years. And if our holding period increases, the more, the discrepancy will be greater. So we need to know what geometric average is. But, you know, one more thing. Some people might think, oh, because holding period return on the scenario 1 is this, can I do this? Isn't it okay? Oh, why is it's not working? Can I simply not divide this by 11? No, you don't do that. That's totally, look, this is outrageous. Cannot be 20. First of all, and also, I don't enter 11 manually, right? You don't enter anything manually other than the initial given data, because if I have a longer data set, simply visually checking, simply by visual check, you can count how many data points are there, but you can make a mistake. So normally, if I were to do it, I would use count command, and then count the number of years. Right? I will let it count like this. Okay. However, even then, that's not right, because average annual return is not simply dividing the holding period return by 11. If you are doing it, actually you need to take the average of each individual annual returns. But again, it is overstating the true average, because true average has to be annual, geometric average. So what is geometric average? Now it looks quite complicated, but think about it. It's because of the compounding effect. It's because of the compounding effect. Compounding is like, you know, snowball rolling down the hill. Suppose you are standing on the top of the snow-covered mountain, and you make a snowball with your hand, and you drop it on the top of the mountain, and the snowball rolls down the hill, rolls down the mountain, and as it adds rounds, in other words, more rounds or more revolution, as it adds more revolution, right? And if you did that on the top of like a mountain that is 1,000 meters high, 1 kilometer high, or 1 kilometer tall, or let's say 30,000 feet high, 30,000 feet high, it will take a lot of it will roll down a lot, and as it rolls down more and more, it picks up more snow, and the amount of snow that is getting added to the snowball every time will get bigger. It's not at the same rate. Think about it. It's not at the same rate, right? The snow being added to the snowball is not increasing at a constant rate. Why? It's increasing because the snowball is getting bigger, and the surface area of the snowball is getting bigger. With more surface area, it will pick up more snow than before. You understand? That's the compounding effect. Now just think about this. You put $1,000 in the bank at 10% interest rate, right? That means 1 year later, there will be $1,100 in your bank account. Now, 2 years later, how much will be there? How much will be there in your bank account? $1,200? No. If you say $1,200, no. Why? Because there's going to be $1,210. Why? Where did that $10? Because first of all, think about it. At the beginning, there was 1,000. In other words, at time zero, there was 1,000. 1 year later, there will be 100 for interest, right? So $1,100. But that's what is sitting there. That's what is sitting there in your bank account at the beginning of year 2. So during year 2, what earns 10% interest? 10% interest is not $1,000, but $1,100 will earn 10%. Does that make sense? So in year 2, the interest will be not $100, but $110. So at the end of year 2, the total amount that will be sitting there in your bank account will be 1,210. Okay? That's compounding. Does that make sense? That's compounding. Year 3, at the end of year 3, it will be more than just 1,300. It will be more. So that's compounding, right? That's the concept of compounding. Now think about it. From year 1 to year 2, the growth rate was 20%. Even if it is growing at equal 20%, right? Even if it is growing at equal 20%, in year 2, it's not going to be 40%. It's going to be, in other words, there will be 20% of, in year 1, this was 20% of this. If the growth rate is constant at 20%, in year 2, it's going to be 20% of 180K, which should be 36K, right? Year 3 and so on. So in other words, if it is growing at a constant rate, there is a compounding going on. Of course, in reality, it doesn't work that neatly, because reality is the result of the demand and supply. Think about the house price doesn't grow at a constant rate, but it grows at an uneven rate, because each year, at the end of each year, the house price is a result of the demand and supply in the market. Right? Makes sense? However, if you put $150 in the bank, and if it earns interest, it earns interest, it will be a constant interest rate. So, in other words, that constant interest rate in reality will have to be the average of these. Will have to be the average of these. But then that average will have to take into consideration the compounding effect, right? Because over time, there is that growth of compounding effect over time. I mean, simple average is something that you use when these data points have no correlation with each other. However, these data growth rates have correlation with each other. They are correlated with each other, one way or another. And it may look random. Yeah, at this point, it looks random, but eventually, the house price grew from this to this. So overall, in 2 years, in 2 of these years, it was negative. Growth rate was negative. In one particular year, growth was 0. Growth rate was 0. But if you average this, it will clearly have a positive trend, right? And that's what we are trying to find. So for geometric average, we're already running out of time, so we cannot do this exercise today.
Yeah.
So somebody has a question? So this is the theoretical breakdown or background, theoretical breakdown of the how geometric average came to be. Why it came to be? Let me go to find geometric average. This is the formula. I will have to give you the formula right out, because actually in topic 3, you will see how this was derived, where this came from. But right now, I'll just have to give this out to you right out. Does someone have a question? I hear this background noise.
No, sorry, my mic was on by mistake.
Okay, no problem. So we're gonna talk about this tomorrow. But I guess but this is all discussed already in the videos. So I'm gonna just tomorrow maybe I'll go into this, or maybe just go to the example. Okay, skip to the example. But anyway, so that wraps up everything for today. And I want you to please, if you haven't done so, all the pre-recorded lectures are here. So we should have covered, all the way up to part 6. But if you haven't done so, please watch the rest of the videos.
So,
okay?
Professor, our homework for
Yeah.
the next
No homework just yet. No homework.
I'm saying just to watch the
No,
video.
no, it's gonna come up very soon because summer is very short.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All righty, you're welcome. And today's recording will be today's live session recording will be posted later on. Okay, so please look out for that. All right. So any other questions? Any other questions? Okay, if you don't have any further questions, then the class is dismissed. Go in peace, and I will see you guys on Monday. Okay? Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you.
Bye, Professor.
All right, you're welcome. Take care, everyone. See you guys on Monday. All right. Stop recording and sign out.